Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound Radio Show, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I'm Robert Winfrey, I'm your host for the evening. Should be a relatively short show again. I am again flying solo. Both Jeff and Pat wound up having some scheduling conflicts, and let's face it, there's not a whole lot to go over here. Tonight we will be just reviewing UFC Fight Night 132, which was the UFC's return to Singapore. It was a Fight Pass exclusive event. I could throw a few more insults this thing's way, but it had enough. So I'll be going over the results from that, giving my 2 cents. Brief talk about some major news items over the last week. Not a whole lot, I seem to recall, but again, I have a list that I will bring up, and we will go through those. So, yeah, that's what's on the agenda, and thank you all very much for listening. Let's go ahead and jump right in here. UFC, again, Fight Night 132 was the UFC's return to Singapore. In the main event, we had a welterweight bout between Donald Cerrone and Leon Edwards. This went about, I think, as I expected it to. I seem to recall joking last week that this was just Donald Cerrone once again going to a foreign country for a card that very few people would see to fight a young up-and-coming welterweight who was just going to be too much for him at this point in the game. And that's basically what happened. Leon Edwards defeated Donald Cerrone via unanimous decision, 48-47 across the board. I was 49-46 for Edwards, which I think is defensible. There's not the worst argument for Cerrone winning 3-2. I don't agree with it at all, but it could probably be made. This was, generally speaking, the first 3 rounds went to Edwards, or 1, 2, and 4. I didn't look at the individual scorecards for this, so I'm not sure. But he either wins 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 4. And then Cerrone then gets, again, either 3 and 5 or 4 and 5. Man, I love Donald Cerrone. I really do. It's almost impossible not to if you're an MMA fan. I mean, this guy is what you love about the sport. That said, there's a handful of holes in his game that one of them I don't think can be fixed. The other he needs to address in a pretty serious way. The one that I don't think can be fixed is actually mental. This is a weird thing that, if you track out Cerrone's career, he tends to struggle when he's angry. If you watch that guy fight when he is happy, if his opponent is kind of affable towards him, or, ambivalent type of thing, he tends to perform really, really well. I mean, look at, some of his welterweight fights. The Matt Brown fight, the Rick Story fight, Patrick Cote fight. They were just, these were guys who, they were competitors. They certainly weren't, screwing around, but they didn't try to get into his head. And some of the guys he has struggled against are guys who have done that to him. There's some others who have beaten him other ways, but just again, kind of for example, I mean, the Nate Diaz fight was that was his first loss in the UFC, and he dominated that first round, but Nate had gotten into his head and got him out of his game by the time we got into rounds 2 and 3. And, I mean, Nate does that to a lot of people. The Masvidal fight, the Darren Till fight, actually, as well. They just kind of, they got him off of his game. And Cerrone's a slow starter anyway. When you get him thinking, when you get him into his own head like that, he doesn't fight the way he should fight. He doesn't fight the way he normally fights. And it allows you to have those rounds up on him. And if you're a really, dangerous fighter, you can just take him out. I mean, Masvidal did. I mean, that was a beating. That might be the worst loss Cerrone's ever suffered, was the one Masvidal put on him. Darren Till, kind of the same way. And then, I mean, if you look at, Cowboy, for as as much of an icon as he is of the sport, and the man is one of the greats. He's 1-4 in his last 5, and that win was over Yancy Medeiros. And again, if you look at Yancy, wasn't getting into his head, wasn't insulting him, wasn't waging mental warfare. Consequently, he went in there and fought like he normally fights. Edwards waged a bit of that warfare, and there's a few other things that Edwards did very successfully. One of them is the other problem that Donald just kind of seems to have, and that's really dealing with southpaws. If you look at I think all of his UFC losses are to southpaws. I'd have to double-check the Masvidal fight. But, because Masvidal does some stance switching, I think, but I can't remember if Masvidal fought him orthodox or southpaw. But if you look at the others, you have, even WEC, the Varner split decision loss that I actually think he won. Lost to Benson Henderson, southpaw. Lost to Benson Henderson again, still a southpaw. Lost to Nate Diaz. Lost to Anthony Pettis, and when Pettis beat him, it was fighting out of the southpaw stance. Pettis switched stance, does a lot of stance switching anyway. Lost to Dos Anjos, southpaw. Went on a big winning streak. Lost to Dos Anjos again, still a southpaw. 4-fight winning streak at welterweight. Gets beat by Masvidal, gets beat by Robbie Lawler, who is a southpaw, gets beat by Darren Till, southpaw. Beats Medeiros. I don't know if Medeiros was fighting southpaw in that fight or not. He might have been. I'd have to double check. And then Leon Edwards, southpaw. And again, he won the Yancey fight. But it's a little troubling that a guy with almost 50 fights, what is he, 46, something like that? 45, 46 fights. Again, a lot of fights. And at the highest level. This is Donald hasn't been fighting just anybody. He's fought some of the best. And for that to still kind of be a hole in his game it's troubling. Again, if you're a southpaw who can trash talk, that is just kind of like the perfect setup to really putting yourself in the best position to beat Donald. Leon Edwards did some really interesting things. Not really interesting. There were some good things that he did, especially in the first round. His knees to the head from the clinch were really good, especially once he opened up a cut around Donald's right eye. That was pretty deep. Wasn't long, but it was deep, and it bled the whole fight. He opened up another one around that same area. He had one kind of by the corner of the eye, and then one that was up above the eyebrow, again on the outside corners. And, once it started flowing, he started targeting it with elbows in the clinch. Every time they broke a clinch, he was swinging a left elbow at that eye. Which good strategy. One of the things that he was doing very well through the first couple of rounds that he stopped doing was a really nice left kick to the body. Now, Donald hasn't been as soft to the body at welterweight as he was at lightweight. I think that weight cut really depleted his ability to absorb damage to the midsection, because that had been a pretty trackable historic weakness in his game. It hasn't been as bad at welterweight, but Edwards was really digging in some of those kicks. They were some of his best tools, actually. Again, that body kick and then kind of the elbows when they were especially exiting the clinch. Every time they were breaking a clinch, Edwards was throwing one of those. He landed a lot of them. But once we got into rounds 3, 4, and 5, he kind of abandoned them. I think he threw less than 5 body kicks throughout those 3 rounds. And he had thrown, again, about that many in the previous 2, and they were working. They were really starting to add up. You could see Donald reacting to them. I was really surprised he abandoned those. And then once he got to the 5th round, he was kind of coasting because he was up. I'm not the biggest fan of that as a fan of fighting, but I can understand it. If you're up enough rounds, why risk getting into a firefight with Donald Cerrone? It's a bad idea. But those were the 2 big things. He was landing a pretty good left whenever Cowboy was trying to close distance on him. But I think the big knock on Edwards' striking, especially in this fight, it's a lot of one and done. It's not a lot of combination work. Anytime Donald started coming after him with combinations, he covered up and absorbed and you just blocked a lot of them, but it was a pretty glaring, not weakness, but it might have even just been a tactical decision, but Leon Edwards is not a volume striker. He tends to do one or two and then just kind of be done. And again, that might have been a call specifically for this fight, but I don't recall him being a big combination guy in any of the UFC fights. I mean, even the ones he's finished, they were kind of just hits, and then finishes to follow up. But he's not a volume guy. He's not a prolonged combination striker. But he is on a 6-fight winning streak. Yeah. He called out Jorge Masvidal. I'm all for that. I mean, nobody wants to fight Jorge Masvidal. He doesn't have a fight. Masvidal hasn't fought since he lost that. Again, I thought he lost it, but the fight with Stephen Thompson in November, he lost to the split decision to Damian Maia that he really could have won. There's a very, very solid argument for him winning that. Then he loses to Stephen Thompson, but I mean, Jorge Masvidal's he's got to be one of the worst guys to fight because it's just such a rough fight. But yeah, I'm all for Leon Edwards and Jorge Masvidal squaring up. But Leon Edwards, again, his only UFC losses are, one of them is to Kamaru Usman and Claudio Silva, and that was split. So yeah, his only real definitive loss in the UFC was to a guy who is definitely in the title picture, if nothing else, in Usman. Time to take that guy very, very seriously in that division if you haven't been beforehand. I don't know what Cerrone does next, but he says he wants to keep fighting, and again, he's in a rough stretch right now, but he hasn't been blown out of the water, really. I mean, Darren Till kind of ran him over, but there was a massive size difference there, and Darren Till is proven to be pretty darn good. I mean, again, he took a beating from Masvidal, but that was competitive until he started getting clipped. The Lawler fight was definitely competitive. This was a competitive fight. I mean, he's not out of it. I don't think he's going to make a run at the belt. I think he's going to be stuck fighting guys in that lower, 11 to 20 rank. I know the UFC's official rankings ended at 15, but that 11 to 20-ish spot I think is where he's going to be for a bit. And I mean Donald is currently tied in 3 categories in the UFC. He's tied for most wins with George St. Pierre. He's tied for most finishes of the TKO variety with, I believe, Anderson Silva. And he's tied for most post-fight bonuses. I mean, this is... he could have taken the top of all 3 of those categories with a certain kind of win last night. Yesterday morning. God. My sleep schedule is all screwed up because of this card. Ugh. But he could have... So again, he's not out of it, but I think it's time to really kind of temper our expectations as far as what he's going to accomplish at this point in his career. And he's still going to have great fights. I mean, this was a good fight. It was a really good fight, all things considered. Was it Fight of the Night? It was not. They gave that to Shane Young and Rolando D. I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, it's kind of a crazy fight, but I am not sure. I probably would have gone with Cerrone and Edwards, actually, now that I think about it. It's certainly my favorite of the night, so we'll go with that. Yeah, again, Leon Edwards, again, he called out Masvidal. Masvidal's ranked below him at this point. I mean, I think he should be looking ahead of himself in the rankings, but if he can beat Masvidal, if he extends his winning streak to 7 by beating Jorge Masvidal, you got to give that guy essentially a number 1 contenders fight at that point. I mean, that's an incredible run. This is a guy who is severely underappreciated, and I'll throw myself in there. I underappreciated him for a while. So, good on him getting a biggest win of his career by a non-trivial margin. So good on him. It's all downhill from there, folks. In your co-main event, Ovince St. Preux defeats Tyson Pedro via straight armbar submission in the first round. Tyson Pedro, man. He should have won this fight. Let me be very, very clear about this. Pedro rocked OSP a little bit with a head kick, dropped him with a straight left, and then for some reason, let me clarify. The first thing he did, I understand. He has hurt OSP. He kind of follows him down there, kind of sitting on the fence. St. Preux gets back up and pushes into him, looking for to protect himself. So Tyson Pedro grabs kind of a front choke. This is almost a carbon copy of what had happened to him when he fought St. Preux when he fought Ilir Latifi. He got badly hurt on the feet, locked up in a standing guillotine, and choked unconscious. Now, so when he shoots in initially to try and buy himself time to recover, I understand Pedro going for that maneuver. Maybe he can get it. Maybe he's got a really good front choke, and we haven't seen it. I don't know. St. Preux defends the choke this time, and they get into a clinch, and for some reason, Pedro decides to just engage in the clinch. I'm going to get a body lock. I'm going to look for takedowns. It was the dumbest thing. He had him dead to rights, and instead of separating and actually trying to finish a guy who was still a little wobbled, he gave him all the time in the world to recover. And then kept trying these takedowns that weren't working. St. Preux reverses one, lands on top, moves into, I believe, full-on side control. Might have been a very open half guard. I can't remember which one. Grabs a double wrist lock, looks for the Kimura. Pedro extends his arm like you're supposed to. So he switches to the straight armbar. Pedro can't defend from there. And, St. Preux's a really strong guy anyway, so it might have been an issue of timing. Just because he cranks on your arm, he's going to break something. St. Preux's a strong guy. Switches to the straight armbar. Pedro taps. He will have nightmares about his decision-making as it pertains to this fight, because he should have won this fight. He easily could have. And he made, again, at least a prolonged series of bad decisions. Even if, he really tried for that first takedown, after that doesn't work, separate. You're clinching up with a guy who is bigger. St. Preux's a big guy. Probably stronger. And has more experience than you in these types of positions. He not only gave St. Preux time to recover, he then put himself in the absolute worst position to actually win the fight. This was shockingly bad real-time decision-making. And a series of these. Again, we're not just talking about one. This wasn't, I heard him, let me dive into his guard. That's a bad decision. But if the other guy is a good guard, he can kind of trap you there, and then exacerbate your bad decision with his good decisions. This was a series of bad decisions from Tyson Pedro. He had the dominant position in the clinch. He's the one with the body lock. He's the one who had OSP on the fence, which isn't always a guarantor of who has superior position, but the body lock certainly is. He could have disengaged safely and gone back to where he was actually winning the fight. Instead, he didn't. He lost. And hopefully he learns from it. Pedro's a young guy, and light heavyweight desperately needs bodies that can be around for 5 years and actually, put in some good fights. And I think he qualifies. I said last week this was just going to be too much too soon for Pedro, and I think that is kind of what happened here. He just wasn't ready to really make the kinds of decisions in real time that you need to against a guy like OSP. And I'm not the biggest fan of St. Preux, but St. Preux at least, is a veteran and has a skill set, and he kind of knows how to use it. So hopefully Pedro learns from this, and we see him back. I don't know what you do with St. Preux at this point. He's fought and lost to, I believe, the majority of people above him. I know there had been some noise about him having a rematch with Shogun, which is a terrible idea. I mean, just Shogun fighting at this point is a terrible idea. Because, yeah, I mean, he's lost to... Has he fought Gustafsson? I don't think he's fought Gustafsson, but Gustafsson's kind of angling for things at the moment. Yeah, he lost to Uzdemir, he's lost to Manawa, he lost to Glover Teixeira, he's lost to Ilir Latifi. And those are kind of the guys ranked above him at the moment. You could do him and Jan Blachowicz, I suppose. Because, yeah, Teixeira, Uzdemir. He beat Corey Anderson. Yeah, I think Blachowicz is the only guy ranked above him that he hasn't already fought and lost to, realistically. With the exception of Gustafsson, and Gustafsson's not taking that fight. So I imagine you're going to see him versus Blachowicz in the near future. As for Pedro, just back down the ranks, man. This is a young guy who still has a lot of time to grow. I mean, he's only 20. He's only 26. Jeez. He's just been kind of pushed into a bit too much. Again, he won his first 2 UFC fights. They give him Latifi, who just bit too much. He beat Safarov, and they throw him in there with OSP. Like, let's give this guy 3 or 4 fights that are more on his level. You know, the division isn't going anywhere, and it's not going to kill us to let this guy actually develop at a reasonable pace. So I don't know who that would be specifically. Let me see. So I had the rankings up, and I lost them. You could do him and Pat Cummins will just wrestle him. Sam Alvey already has someone who I think called him out that I was okay with. I mean, Dominic Reyes is actually winning fights. I need a different list than what I have. I only have the rankings, which only go so far. So let us... That is a weird list. Let's see who else we could have him fight. I mean, you have Marcos Rogerio de Lima. You have someone like, a Jake Collier, Adam Milstead. You could have him fight the loser of the upcoming fight between Khalil Roundtree. He's already beaten Roundtree, though. So if Gokhan Saki beats Khalil Roundtree, you could do Pedro and Saki. You have Bojan Mihailovic, who may or may not still be there. Jordan Johnson. But he should be fighting guys on that lower end of things. There's just no reason to really have him. Devin Clark, maybe? Or Clark dropped to middleweight. I think Clark dropped to middleweight. But there's guys at that lower end that he should be fighting at this point instead of established veterans who really know what they're doing in there. And you have to test him, sure. That's inevitable. But a guy with with only 8 fights, the division is just starved for talent. So anyone who shows an inkling of promise, they're going to push too soon, and they're going to suffer because of it. I mean, the behavior is actually going to perpetuate the problem. Speaking of divisions that suck, UFC, the flyweight division, women's flyweight. Be very clear about that. The women's flyweight division. I mean, the men's flyweight isn't great, but women's flyweight is embryonic. Jessica Ai defeats Jessica Rose Clark via unanimous decision, 30-27 and then 29-28 twice. Look, Jessica Ai isn't all that good, but the division is not all that good, so she can have a lot of success. I don't know how far I can see her going in this division right now, but again, given that it's so new, I mean, I wouldn't favor her much over, even Nico Montano. I mean, she's the champion. I shouldn't say even. But, Nico or, a Barb Honchak, maybe even a Lauren Murphy. I don't know how well she'd do. I mean, I certainly wouldn't pick her against, Valentina, but I wouldn't pick anyone in that division over Valentina. But she's going to have a fair amount of success while the division sorts itself out until the general level of talent rises to the point where her skill set no longer carries her forward, and then she's going to fall back into losing and irrelevance. But until then, she's going to enjoy some success. And Jessica Rose Clark just was not quite ready for adapting to what I does, because this guy didn't do a whole lot here other than have just slightly straighter, faster punches. I mean, that was really it. And Clark was just kind of looping and a little bit more mechanical, a little bit more pushy with her punches rather than snappy, so hopefully Clark learns from this and going forward, because she's young and still kind of inexperienced, whereas I has been around for a while, if nothing else. I mean, she's got 20-some-odd fights, a lot of those in the UFC. A lot of those against a fairly high level of competition. I mean, Alexis Davis is no slouch. Miesha Tate certainly wasn't when they fought. Juliana Pena's not anyone to take lightly. Sarah McMahon wasn't. I laugh because she lost to Betch Correia because Betch Correia sucks, but I mean, she was losing to Leslie Smith before Leslie Smith's ear almost fell off. But again, she's on a 2-fight winning streak. This seems to be more. This is definitely her natural weight class. She was way undersized at, not way undersized. She was undersized at bantamweight. This is where she should be fighting. So we'll see how far that keeps going. But not a great fight. At welterweight, Li Jingliang defeats Daichi Abe via unanimous decision, 30-26 and 30-27 twice. Jingliang was just better everywhere. He walked onto, I think, one counter right that kind of caught him a little bit and had him, made him regain his balance. But other than that, he was, again, just better. I mean, Jingliang has surprisingly heavy hands, because to look at him you wouldn't think it, but he does. I mean, he's got good top control too. I was surprised he never really tried to get this thing to the mat. But just really, just better. Good inside and good leg kicks from Lee this time around. I'm surprised at how good his kicking game has become over the last little bit. But he was just using the inside leg kick to square up his opponent, then come in with the power hand, which is a classic combination for a reason, because it works, and it works quite well. Better combination striking generally than I've seen from him in the past, and he wasn't forcing it as much. I mean, he was really forcing things against Jake Matthews, including his finger into Matthews' eye, but we talked about that enough when it happened. This was a designated win for him to kind of get back on track, because Abe is not quite on his level. There were a few of those fights on this card, just guys clearly being kind of set up. Like, you are just not on this guy's level, and this guy's going to beat you. And that's what happened here. So I don't know what you do immediately with Lee, but he's a good fighter, and will continue. He's kind of back where he was prior to the Matthews loss, all things considered. And it was only the 4 fights on the main card, so let's go ahead and run through the prelims. Oh, this made me happy. Peter Yan defeats Teruto Ishihara via knockout in the first round punches. I mentioned to you guys last week, to all 5 of you who listened to this, that this was actually the fight I was looking forward to, because I watched some of Jan's ACB fights, and this is a guy you really should pay attention to. I think on commentary they described him as kind of a bantamweight and slightly more Thai boxing oriented version of Justin Gaethje, which is not inaccurate, even though it does. That might paint kind of the right picture, even though a lot of the details are different. Yan is a much more combination-oriented fighter than Gaethje is, all things considered. Yan is more inclined to use elbows. Yan is also more strategically sound. And I love Justin Gaethje, but Yan is a more strategic fighter than Gaethje is. I mean, look, beating Teruto Ishihara isn't the biggest thing in the world because Ishihara is, I mean, he's 1-4 in his last 5 in the UFC, and I mean, this guy lost to Artem Lobov, and I've made my position on Artem Lobov rather clear. This was the first time he's been stopped with strikes, so good on Jan for that. You do got to bring this guy along slowly. He's only got 11 fights. He's 10. Sorry, he's 9-1. And his only loss was that split decision to Magomed Magomedov, and I thought he won their first fight. Quite honestly, great fight if you haven't seen it. And then he took the rematch without any controversy. Again, I believe all these are up on the official ACB YouTube page. They're pretty good about getting their stuff up there. If you haven't seen his stuff from that promotion, look it up. I mean, all but now, the majority of his fights have been in that promotion. He had 2 fights during his run there that were outside. He had his debut outside, 2 in ACB, had 1 outside, and then the rest were in ACB before he debuted in the UFC. So you can find all of his fights, basically, there. Worth looking up. Again, you want to keep bringing him along slowly, so you don't want to give him someone in the top 15, especially at bantamweight, which is a really good division. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can continue to do. I've kind of been excited for this guy for a while, so seeing him in the UFC, it's a good thing. The guy's worth paying attention to. Song Yadong defeats Felipe Arantes via TKO in the second round. Yadong surprised me in this a little bit. I didn't pick him, but I'm not sure I'm going to make that mistake again. Fast hands, very fast. Good body to head work in combination, and when he kind of straightens out his punches... I'm partially confusing the finish here. No. Yeah, he floored Aranches with an elbow from the clinch. A beautiful right kind of arcing elbow. It caught Aranches right a little bit behind the ear, but way towards the bottom, and then right behind the jawline. That's where you want to land those, because your consciousness goes in a hurry. You get hit really hard right there. He dominated the majority of this fight. I mean, I was really impressed with what he brought in totality. So I'm definitely someone to pay attention to if he continues to develop. Athletic, fast hands, good finishing instincts, clearly. Keep your eyes on him. Shane Young defeats Rolando D via TKO in the second round. Not a whole lot here. Young just kept walking forward, and D kept stopping when he got to the fence. Young landed... He had some good straight punches, but no defense. D just really struggled to put together combinations. Had he done so, he might have won this fight, because he kept... I mean, they were both landing. And all things considered, D had more power, but Young was more persistent and more accurate, and that counts for a lot, so... Again, I haven't seen enough of Shane Young to really have an opinion of him, because his UFC debut was on short notice, and he got smashed by Alexander Volkanovski. And, I mean, Volkanovski smashes everybody, so... Again, I don't have a full opinion of him yet, but he's also on the younger side. As for D, cut him. Featherweight's not in a position where you just need random bodies, and Rolando D is... I mean, he's got 1 win in the UFC. Like, come on. We don't really need this guy. At welterweight, Song Kanan defeated Hector Aldana via TKO in the second round. I was surprised by Aldana. This was his return after like a 3-year layoff. And he did not look rusty. I mean, I suppose when you get to something like 3 years, you shouldn't look rusty because you've been training so much. But again, I was surprised. He's a powerful kicker. Aggressive guy, generally speaking. Just, again, all things considered... just looked really good. Looked much better than Kanan. Kanan wound up winning when he finally straightened out his right hand. He'd been looping it all fight. Finally straightened it out, caught Aldana right on the temple and dropped him. I mean, Kanan clearly has power, but he struggles to really... He's not a guy who makes a whole lot of adjustments, and if he can't beat you with what he's initially come in with, I don't know how far he's going to go. Again, I was significantly more impressed with Aldana's overall game than I was with the guy who won, so that should tell you something. Jake Matthews defeated Shinso Anzai via technical submission, rear naked choke in the first round. This looked like a world-class welterweight, which Jake Matthews is, against a not world-class welterweight, which Shinso Anzai is. Matthews everywhere better. Caught him with knees coming in when Anzai tried to take him down. Caught him with knees in the clinch. Battered him. Got on top. Clearly, just better everywhere. Jake Matthews is really good. And should be looking at a near top 15 opponent going forward. I mean, looking at him now, it's shocking to think he ever made 155. But he's also grown a bit since then, too. So, again, kind of a near top 15 guy, I think for him next would be appropriate. Who is number 15 at the moment, actually, now that I think about it, at welterweight? There you are. Oh, Stun Gun's number 15. That might be a bit much, but Stun Gun hasn't looked great lately either. Yeah, I would be okay with that. It wouldn't be my preferred fight, I think, but I'd be okay with it. At women's strawweight, Yan Xiaonan defeated Viviane Pereira via unanimous decision, 29-28 twice, and then 30-27. Pereira just is... I don't know. She looked really bad in this fight, if nothing else. She had kind of the Vanderlei Silva stance going on, a little bit squared up, looking to kind of absorb and then counter with big hooks, but she wasn't slipping and then she wasn't actually countering. I think Jack Slack pointed out on Twitter, when your game plan is slip and rip, but you're neither slipping nor advancing. Xiaonan had a pretty exciting UFC debut in a fight she won. Another good one here. She's got a really good jab. Good kicking game. She needs to learn how to build off of what she does. She's a little one-note at the moment, but I imagine she'll get better at that. She just needs a few more reps and a bit more practice in, okay, we're going to use this and then we're going to build off of it as time goes on. Because there's a fair amount good about her game. And women's strawweight it's the best women's division, so if you're going to want to make a run, that's kind of the hardest one, but it's also not impossible to make a run there, so. Let me think, at flyweight, Matt Schnell defeats Naoki Inoue via split decision. I scored this for Inoue, 29-28. This was 29-28 twice for Schnell and then once for Inoue. Very impressed with both guys in many respects. I was really impressed with Inoue's striking. This whole thing was a striking battle. And Inoue's rep coming into the UFC was as a submission wizard, which he is. But for him to go this whole fight and arguably win it striking, says a lot about his overall game. There's seasoning that needs to happen there, but he's not a one-trick pony. He can fight everywhere. Definitely someone to pay attention to. Because, again, I thought he won. When Schnell won this fight, it was because he was able to actually get some forward pressure and land some combinations. When they were just at distance, he was getting kind of chewed up by the jab. But really good fight, all things considered. Good win for Schnell. Razor close fight. It's good stuff from both guys, and these are the type of guys that it's good to see just advancing their skill set as much as it is winning. So I look forward to seeing Inoue going forward again. He's coming along, and Schnell was pretty good when he debuted, and again, flyweight can use some talented guys moving up in that division. So, speaking of less than talented flyweights, Uka Sasaki defeated Janelle Lausa via rear naked choke in the second round. Lausa was just utterly unprepared for the grappling of Sasaki. Sasaki got him down, dominant on the mat, dominant grappler. The back take from this was actually really sweet. He had mount and he handcuffed one of Laos's hands, I believe his right. So, for those of you unfamiliar with the terminology, that would be Sasaki, who I believe, again, I think he had full mount. If not, it was like 3/4 mount. He fed Laos's right arm behind his back and then grabbed it with his right arm, so it stuck behind him. And then when he was trying to turn and get his arm back, as he was shifting his hips, Sasaki just slipped around to his back with both hooks. It was a really beautiful back take. And then just choked him out from there again. Sasaki is good. I think we might have seen his ceiling, all things considered. And then kicking everything off at women's flyweight, Ji-Yeon Kim defeated Melinda Fabian via split decision. I don't agree with the split. I thought this was pretty clearly a Kim fight. Nothing all that impressive out of that fight. It was lower level striking, but not the worst fight on the card. So just kind of accept it and deal with it. And that was it. I mean, this thing started at like 2:30 in the morning my time. So 4:30 a.m. Eastern. I don't know how many people actually read it, but thanks to those of you who did. I apologize for some of the gaffes that might be in there. I was in a caffeine state induced of insomnia to kind of deal with it, so just thanks to those who did follow along or read it after the fact. I'm not picky. Just thank you for reading. I know you can go a lot of places for that, and I am humbled that you choose me. So there's nothing to preview, so the only major news item I seem to recall from the last week was Josh Barnett coming to terms with the UFC on his release, and I use that phrasing very specifically. Barnett, for those of you who may not have been aware of this, was suspended by USADA about 16, 17 months ago for a failed drug test. Barnett contested it and wound up taking them to court over it. The court found in his favor, so now bear in mind, Josh Barnett does have a bit of a history here. He was stripped of the UFC heavyweight title after he failed a drug test. He spent the majority of his career fighting in Japan, where they had no drug testing, fighting for pride. So this is not a man with a clean record, all things considered. But he was able to prove essentially his innocence in this case. And after that was found and his suspension was revoked, I mean, it was still 15 months and however many thousands of dollars he paid in legal fees. Because lawyers don't work for free. And they retroactively lifted his suspension. Or they changed it to have been up almost immediately. I forget the specifics. But his stated position is that he is simply not comfortable continuing to compete with the UFC, while USADA has that kind of say over his career. And in all honesty, I can't blame him. I mean, look, I do want a clean sport, generally speaking. Sorry, not generally. Broadly speaking, I do want a clean sport. I think there have been some issues with USADA, both in terms of protocol, in terms of what was simply foisted on the fighters, and we've seen a few other things about some of their procedures and policies that are troubling. And if Josh Barnett is not comfortable with them overseeing the drug testing, I don't blame him, and that means you don't fight in the UFC right now. I imagine he'll be in Bellator in the near future. He and Scott Coker have some history, and Bellator has I can't say they have a good heavyweight division, but he'd certainly be at or near the top of it if he went over there, and I don't blame him at all. This is a guy who got screwed by them. He got screwed out of 15 months of his career, near the tail end of it, so time is at a premium for him, and for something that he was able to exonerate himself over. If he just looked at that and goes, nope, I will not, I am done with you people, I don't trust you, I can't, this is not good, That's his stated position. It's understandable, and it's not unreasonable. So, I expect to see him in Bellator. Also in Bellator news, former UFC light heavyweight champion Lyoto Machida has announced that he was signing with Bellator. He was coming off of that really impressive knockout of, it's Vitor Belfort, so how impressive is it? But it was a front kick to the face, man. Turned Belfort off like a robot. Again, Machida's another guy who, the fact that USADA still has the substance he was suspended for on their banned list is almost comical. It's been proven not to really have an anabolic profile. And it's still there because they don't want to admit that they were wrong, type thing. He's also, 40 plus. He's not really getting back towards the title. If he's able to if he got a good deal from Bellator, he could compete at middleweight or light heavyweight for them and be very successful. He knocked their light heavyweight champion out cold when he knocked out Ryan Bader, and he's beaten their middleweight champion. Yeah, he beat Gegard Mousasi. Again, if he's getting a better deal, I wish him the best. Kind of sad he won't be in the UFC, and I won't get to watch his fights because I hate Bellator. But it's his career. He doesn't owe me a darn thing. And I think that's the major news. I don't think they announced any major fights. Bring up my list very briefly. I think those were certainly the two major news items. There's rumors that Brock Lesnar could show up at UFC 226. I laugh. He might, but I laugh. Whittaker's... there was a thing with Robert Whittaker recently where he kind of brought up some of the issues with USADA and then kind of joked about Yoel Romero's rehydration ability. And to be fair, it is impressive that Romero, especially if you saw him... If you look at Yoel Romero's weigh-in photos from UFC 225 and then look at him when he's standing in the cage with Whittaker. That's pretty serious. And, if he did it legally, it's a really good rehydration program, and more people should look into it. We had the PFL card, which featured Jason High getting screwed by a ref. After Efrain Escudero missed weight, he wasn't going to make 155. They agree to a catch weight. He misses that. Then a bad call on the submission from the ref in that fight. Kayla Harrison made her debut on that card and manhandled a woman. Because Kayla Harrison is kind of a beast. She'd have to drop some pretty serious muscle mass if she wanted to get down to 145. Because right now she's fighting at 155, and that woman is jacked. Especially her, her upper arms and her back. She's the first American to win a gold medal in judo of either gender. She's a two-time gold medalist at that. She won in both London and Rio. Serious athlete. I'm excited to see where her MMA career goes, but there's not really a featherweight division, much less a lightweight division for women. So I don't know if she is going to look into that, or if they're going to, because Cyborg could fight at 155 easily. 145 is a big cut for Cyborg. But if you don't put someone in their second professional fight in there with Cyborg, that's a terrible idea. Because she looked stiff on the feet. But on the mat, when she's able to get you down, that's her world. And for a debuting fighter, she looked good. Oh God, yes, I have to bring this up. On the Tuesday Night Contender Series, I don't remember if it was last week or the one before, but there were 4 contracts awarded. Now, the most recent one, there were 4 contracts, which was crazy, but they all deserved it. There were some crazy fights from that card. But Greg Hardy, who fought a couple of weeks ago and has some controversy around him because he's a terrible person. And not just like in the generally terrible. Like, if you guys aren't familiar with the specifics of his circumstance, look them up. I don't want to go into details here. But he wins his fight in emphatic fashion early, knocked out his opponent, and then injured his knee. I think it was an ACL injury during an AFL game, the Arena Football League. And to everyone who hates Greg Hardy, I don't blame you, and this is funny if you happen to think he deserves this, and I tend to think he deserves it. Let's see. I think that's it. The buy rate for UFC 225 is reportedly around the 250,000 mark, which might be slightly exaggerated on the UFC's part. I know they were talking about it only a lot of the actual like pay-per-view services had it pegged at 150-ish. So if the UFC's number will probably includes all streaming platforms. So Fight Pass or other things that they might farm that out to. That's a little better than I was expecting, but that's still not good, especially considering it was a great card. That was a genuinely great card. But the 225, I mean, these days it's kind of a win for the UFC, so. And I'm not going to get into that. I think that is. Yeah, I think that's it as far as the major things from last week. So, yeah, that's going to go ahead and wrap us up. Thank you very much for listening. Another about an hour-long show, so yay me. Next week, we will have a big show. I believe we'll have both Pat and Jeff, because we will be previewing the Tough 27, or whatever season it is, finale, and previewing UFC 226, which has two great fights. Miocic versus Cormier is a darn good fight, and then the fight I'm looking forward to most is the featherweight title fight between Holloway and Ortega. Oh, I'm so excited for that fight. That's my favorite fight on that card. So we'll be breaking down all the action from that, for both of those two upcoming events, because that is International Fight Week. So I hope you'll come back for that. As for where else you can find me, there is no event this Saturday that I'm aware of. But this Tuesday, Mark Radulich and I will be reviewing Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom over on Damn You Hollywood. And I think there's a Luke Cage Season 2 review this week that I may have been shanghaied into. I'll double check that. If there is, it will be Wednesday or Thursday. So be on the lookout for that. I actually haven't seen the show yet, so I should confirm the dates and then probably watch the stupid show. So I can be on the lookout for both of those in the upcoming week, and then I think next week is the Voltron. The last two seasons of Voltron review, the Netflix original series, that I may or may not be participating in. I have been so far, kind of by accident. I wound up doing the first one just because Robert Cooper was really late getting to the show, and then I've just kind of stuck around as tradition. But that's where you can find me until next Sunday, where I'll be back here, and we'll have hopefully a full panel to preview maybe the best card of the year on paper. Until then, thank you very much for tuning in, for pointing your friends in our direction. We're still trying to grow this thing, folks. So if you happen to have friends who are MMA fans, point them in the direction of the show. Give me a chance to win them over, if they'll still speak to you after listening to this. Until then, please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.